I never imagined I would be the one to teach my father-in-law a lesson about respect, but when he drank from the wrong glass that night, everything changed. My name is Julian Mercer, a 32-year-old photographer from Asheville, North Carolina. I built my business from the ground up, shooting weddings, wildlife, and magazine spreads, the kind of work that's lucrative if you're good, and I am. But to my in-laws, Gerald and Diane, what I do has never been considered a real job. "How's the little photography hobby going?" Gerald would sneer at family dinners, making no effort to hide his contempt. He was an investment banker, the type of man who measured success in square footage and stock options. Every Sunday dinner at their home followed the same pattern, Diane fussing over her daughter, while Gerald questioned me about my finances. My wife, Haley, would squeeze my hand under the table, a silent apology for her parents' behavior. I had spent the entire week on a wildlife assignment in Montana, trudging through deep snow to photograph bison for National Geographic. I was exhausted, but Haley insisted we couldn't skip her mother's birthday dinner. "Just a couple of hours," she promised. I should have trusted my gut feeling when Diane cornered me in the kitchen. Her eyes darted around the room before she handed me the drink, and her fingers trembled slightly as she said, "I made it special just for you." Something wasn't right, and I had no idea just how wrong things were about to get. The perfect target. Haley and I met 6 years ago at an art exhibition of my work. She was finishing her master's in environmental science, and I was just beginning to establish my career. We had an immediate connection. She understood my passion for capturing the world through a camera lens, and I admired her dedication to protecting it. Her parents, however, were a different story. From our very first meeting, Gerald made it clear he had a different vision for his daughter's partner, someone with a steady desk job, a retirement plan, a company car, someone exactly like him. Diane was more subtle. She'd compliment my photos, but then ask when I planned to get a more stable job. At family events, she would introduce me as the photographer instead of her son-in-law. For years, I tried to win them over. I'd bring expensive wine to dinner, show them my published work, and mention my high-profile clients. Nothing altered their belief that I was a temporary phase in their daughter's life, a passing fancy she would eventually outgrow. Last Christmas, I overheard Diane on the phone. "Haley could have married Thomas, you know, the orthopedic surgeon with family money, but she chose the creative one." The way she paused before saying, "creative," made it sound like a flaw or an illness. Gerald was more blunt. When Haley and I announced we were trying for a baby, he pulled me aside and said, "Children are expensive, son. Maybe you should consider getting a real job before bringing one into the world." I never told Haley any of these things. She loved her parents despite their faults, and I didn't want to put her in a position where she had to choose sides. So I smiled, gave Gerald a firm handshake at every visit, praised Diane's cooking, and kept my true feelings to myself. But there were warning signs I should have paid more attention to. The way Diane would ask Haley for help in the kitchen whenever I talked about a successful project, or how she would, accidentally, leave me out of family photos. The time Gerald suggested Haley get therapy for her impulsive decisions, while staring directly at me, I overlooked it all, thinking that with time they would eventually accept me. I was mistaken. The glass that changed everything. On the Friday of Diane's birthday dinner, I returned from Montana with a windburned face and a memory card full of images that would cover our mortgage for 3 months. I was exhausted but managed to shower, put on a button-down shirt, and drive us to her parents' stately colonial home in the affluent part of town. The dinner started off as usual. Gerald boasted about a recent business deal, Diane fussed over the table settings, and Haley's brother Owen and his wife Vanessa engaged in polite conversation. I sipped a beer and counted the minutes until we could leave. After the main course, Diane announced she had made her famous sangria for dessert. She went into the kitchen, and I offered to help carry the glasses. That's when I saw it. She had 2 glasses set aside from the others, and as I walked in, she quickly poured something from a small vial into one of them. It wasn't a garnish or an ingredient. It was clear and had no smell. She hid the vial the second she heard my footsteps. "Oh, Julian, I've got it," she said a little too cheerfully. "This one's for you. A special recipe for my favorite son-in-law." My stomach dropped. The glass had a barely noticeable film on the surface, catching the light. "Let me help you carry these," I said, picking up both of the glasses she had prepared. Back in the dining room, Gerald was scrolling on his phone, barely looking up. "Sangria, sir," I said, and placed the tampered glass in front of him instead of taking it myself. I watched him drink from it, making an excuse that I preferred water with my dessert. 45 minutes later, Gerald was pale, sweating, and rushing to the bathroom. The loud sounds of his illness echoed through the house. Diane's face went white as she realized what had happened. Her eyes met mine across the table, and in that moment, I knew 2 things for sure. My mother-in-law had tried to poison me, and she knew that I was aware of it. I didn't react or confront her. I just continued eating my chocolate cake while Haley rushed to check on her father. In the ensuing chaos, with Gerald claiming it must have been food poisoning and Diane stammering about bad shellfish, I quietly put the untouched glass, the one meant for me, into my pocket. Something inside me had changed. The anger I felt wasn't a hot, explosive rage. It was cold and calculated. I wasn't going to let this go, but I wasn't going to fight them on their terms either. I was going to make them face the people they really were. The evidence. The Monday after the dinner, I took the glass to Jason, a former client who owned a toxicology lab. "Personal or professional?" he asked when I explained what I needed. "Family matter," I replied. 3 days later, he called. "Julian, there were benzodiazepines in that drink. Nothing lethal, but enough to knock someone out for a few hours, maybe because some memory loss." "Where did you get this?" I thanked him and asked for a written report, but I didn't answer his question. That night, I told Haley I wanted to skip Sunday dinners for a while, saying I needed to focus on an upcoming exhibition. She was disappointed but understood. I didn't tell her about the test results yet. I needed more information first. Over the next 2 weeks, I did some research. Diane had prescriptions for Xanax from 3 different doctors and had been doubling and tripling her doses for years. There were also local rumors about her, strange behavior at a neighbor's party, and accusations of stealing jewelry at her country club, stories her family had worked hard to keep quiet. I gathered all the information and waited for my opportunity. It came when Haley mentioned her mother needed photos for a social media profile. She specifically asked if you would take them. Haley said, surprised by the request. I agreed. The following Saturday, I arrived at their house alone, camera bag in one hand, a sealed envelope in the other. Diane was waiting, dressed in expensive clothing with perfect makeup. "Gerald's at the office," she explained. "Before we start," I said softly, "I thought you might want to see this." I handed her the envelope, which contained the toxicology report and printouts of her multiple prescriptions. Her hands trembled as she read. "This is absurd," she whispered. "I would never. We both know what happened." I interrupted. Her face hardened. "You're not good enough for my daughter, and you never will be. A man should provide security, not pictures. And drugging your daughter's husband provides security?" I kept my voice steady. "It wasn't going to hurt you," she snapped. "Just make you sick, make you miss that ridiculous gallery opening you've been talking about for months. Show Haley that you're unreliable. Let that sink in," I said. "Here's what happens next. You're going to tell Gerald what you did, and then you're both going to start treating me with respect. Not because you've suddenly changed your minds about me, but because the alternative is Haley finding out exactly who her parents are." Diane let out a hollow laugh. "She'll never believe you over us." I picked up my camera bag. "Maybe not, but she'll believe the lab report and the prescription records and the neighbors you've alienated. Are you willing to bet your relationship with your daughter on that?" I left without taking a single photo. The trap tightens. That night, Diane called Haley in tears, claiming I had been hostile and threatening during our photo session. When Haley confronted me, I couldn't keep the truth from her any longer. I showed her everything: the lab report, the prescriptions, and even the increasingly hostile text messages her mother had sent me over the years. "My mother wouldn't do this," she kept saying, but her voice lacked conviction. The next day, she confronted her parents. I wasn't there, but when she came home, her eyes were red from crying. "My father says it was all a misunderstanding," she said quietly. "That you're trying to drive a wedge between us because you're insecure about your career." I just nodded, having anticipated this response. "What do you think?" I asked. She didn't answer, instead just crawled into bed and turned away from me. I had tried to fight back, but somehow I had fallen even deeper into their trap. Now I was the villain in their story, and they had managed to sow doubt in the one person whose opinion mattered most. For 2 weeks, Haley barely spoke to me. She went to her parents' house alone and came back with red eyes and new uncertainties. I buried myself in my work, spending long hours in my studio, waiting for the storm to pass. Then, a package arrived for me. There was no return address, just my name scrawled on the front in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a USB drive and a note. "You should see this. Vanessa, Owen's wife." The drive contained video files from Gerald and Diane's home security system. The timestamps matched the night of the dinner. There was Diane in the kitchen, clearly adding something to a drink. There was me entering and taking the glasses. And there was Gerald drinking from the tampered glass. But there was more footage from after we had left. Diane screaming at Gerald, blaming him for drinking from the wrong glass, and Gerald yelling back, "This isn't the first time you've done something like this." I watched the footage 3 times, trying to comprehend what I was seeing, not just confirmation of Diane's actions, but proof of a pattern and evidence that Gerald was aware of it. The next file was from 2 days after the dinner. Diane and Gerald were arguing in their living room about me. "He knows what you did," Gerald said. "So what?" Diane replied. "It's his word against mine. Haley will never choose him over family. And if she does, then she's not the daughter I raised," Diane said coldly. "Don't worry, I've already started talking to her about their marriage problems, planting seeds. By the time I'm done, she'll be filing for divorce and thinking it was her idea." I shut my laptop, my hands shaking. This wasn't just about me. This was a calculated effort to control Haley's life, to isolate her from anyone who didn't fit their vision. And they had been doing it for years. I called Vanessa immediately. "Why did you send this to me?" I asked. "Because they did the same thing to me when I married Owen," she said quietly. "They tried to break us up for 2 years, said I wasn't good enough. It almost worked. Why didn't you tell us?" I asked. "Owen doesn't know," she admitted. "He worships his father and believes everything he says. I tried to tell him, but he thinks I'm paranoid. I just couldn't stand by and watch them do it to someone else." The confrontation. The next day, I got a text from Gerald. "We should talk man to man. No wives." I met him at his country club. He was waiting in a private room, drinking bourbon. "Julian," he started, "families are complicated. My wife, she can be difficult, protective, but she means well." "Drugging someone means well?" I asked. He waved a dismissive hand. A misunderstanding. Diane takes medication for anxiety. She probably mixed up the glasses. I have the security footage, Gerald. His face instantly changed, becoming cold and calculating. What do you want? Money? Is that what this is about? I always knew you married Haley for financial reasons. I want you both to leave us alone, I said simply. Stop trying to convince Haley I'm not good enough. Stop interfering in our marriage. Gerald leaned forward. You think this is the first time we've dealt with someone like you? People who want to take advantage of our family. He laughed. Haley will come home where she belongs. She always does. Ask her about Thomas. Ask her about the fiancé before you. A cold feeling washed over me. What are you talking about? Haley was engaged before she met you. Nice guy, a doctor. We didn't like his background. It took us 6 months to convince her he was wrong for her. She broke it off, came home crying to Daddy. He smiled. History repeats itself. On the drive home, I called Haley's college roommate, Bethany, and asked her about Thomas. Oh God, she said. That was awful. He was perfect for her, but her parents, they convinced her he was cheating. They planted evidence. He tried to tell her the truth, but by then, she didn't trust him anymore.